Sunday, April 23rd. I am Nick Gelso, and this is episode 206 of Celtics Beat. Episode 206 of Celtics Beat. Fans, it's game day in Boston. I'm Nick Gelso, not Larry H. Russell. He's out on assignment. I get the privilege of sitting in the host chair today on Celtics Beat, and I can't tell you how thrilled I am. We have quite the show lined up for you. We're going to take you out to Chicago before Game 4 with all of the recaps from Game 3. We're going to talk to Jared Weiss of CLNS Radio. That's Jared Weiss, NBA. He's going to give us a touch on all things going on in the Celtics practice on Saturday, all things Game 3 on Friday, and a preview for Game 4 on Sunday. And folks, just when you thought that was enough, no, we have more for you. Following Jared Weiss, I hooked up with Mike Gorman, legendary voice of the Boston Celtics for our friends over at CSNNE. Mike checked in on the Celtics. He gave us Brad Stevens, some really interesting nuggets on Brad Stevens and how he's been able to really hold the team together, in Mike's words, as a friend, a brother, and a father figure to his team. And games 1 and 2, going into that game, obviously traumatic news, tragedy with Isaiah Thomas's sister, China Thomas. And then on top of that, he had to pull them together and really do game prep. Brad Stevens, top 5 coach in the NBA, right? One of the best. Legendary Mike Gorman agrees in the second half of the show. And he had his team prepared, but the difference maker in Game 3 seemed to be Isaiah being able to go out, put some closure on the situation in Seattle. And then, of course, the Kevin Garnett voice message to Ed Lacerte, the trainer. I mean, could you get any better storytelling material here for Celtics fans? I mean, Kevin Garnett leaves a voicemail on the trainer, Ed Lacerte's voicemail for the team. You heard it. You're going to hear it right now. Avery Bradley is going to tell you about it.
What was that message from KG?
He just told us, he said, you can either play two ways. You can either make excuses and say it's emotional, let's give up this year and worry about next year, or you can fight for his family, and that's what we did.
That was taken from the post-game presser on Friday night, Game 3, and you could hear it in Avery Bradley's voice. You could hear a lot more from Avery Bradley, too, at the YouTube channel for CLNS, youtube.com/CLNS Radio. There you can find all the post-game pressers, practice pressers, even from out in Chicago, pre-game pressers for tonight's game, this afternoon's game versus the Bulls, Game 4, and of course all the work from Jared Weiss and all of our great podcasters, Coach Nick, B-Ball Breakdown, Real GM, Danny LaRue, and the list goes on and on and on. Oh, and this show is also available on the CLNS Radio mobile app and the YouTube channel with everything else. So back to the game, Avery Bradley. Here's a guy that I have covered in the locker room. I've gotten to observe Avery in situations with the media, and you want to talk about a soft-spoken, humble, level guy. That's Avery Bradley, and you heard it right here after Game 3. Bradley was pumped up, more so than I've ever heard him, from KG's message prior to game time, to tip-off. And if you listen to the practice pressers from yesterday, Saturday, you'll also notice it kind of impacted all the players. Jared Weiss is going to join us now, talk to us about Kevin Garnett's impactful message, but more importantly, how the Celtics have kind of changed their demeanor, taken momentum back in this series, and maybe, quite possibly are the favorites again. In the last couple weeks of the regular season, as seeding was being figured out, Jimmy, Jared, and I on the Garden Report discussed who were probably the least best opponent for the Celtics. I had the Bulls, but I had the Rondo Bulls, and Jimmy and Jared, their predictions or their best case scenarios kind of seem to be relevant again, as the Bulls are now without Rondo, and Jared Weiss is going to join us now to tell you where he thinks they now stand in the series. Then hang tight. We're going to come right back. We're going to talk with Mike Gorman, legendary play-by-play man for the Boston Celtics. But first, a word to keep the lights on. Today's episode of Celtics Beat is powered by Blue Apron, the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. Did you know that cooking together creates great, strong family bonds? And research shows that Blue Apron families cook 3 times more often together. Those who spend a lot of money at restaurants and high-end grocery chains can now spend under $10 per person for a delicious meal. Meals this month include cashew stir-fried chicken with mango and mandarins and jasmine rice, crispy barramundi with quinoa and roasted carrot salad, udon noodle soup with miso and soft-boiled eggs. These are just some of the meals I tried this month with Blue Apron. They make it easy, they make it fast, they make it affordable, and it's super, super high quality. If you enjoy Celtics Beat and have been curious about Blue Apron, why not pump up our show by trying Blue Apron and not risking anything? Honestly, you could check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping. That's by going to blueapron.com/Celtics Beat. You'll love how good it feels and it tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. Go to blueapron.com/Celtics Beat. Jared Weiss joining us from the Windy City in Chicago. Jared, is it windy out there?
I mean, that is how they got the name, right? It's pretty much like Boston, but just more lakes.
So, yeah, right. So, and you transplanted from Boston to Chicago, traveling on the road with the team. Big difference in Game 1 and 2 versus Game 3. Jared, the mentality, the mood around the team after Game 3 has to be quite a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, the somberness has been lifted to a degree that was pretty noticeable in the first couple games. I mean, the KG speech.
Oh, we got to go there.
Telling them to take the tragedy of Isaiah and use it as fire to make them proud. I mean, that they're kind of walking that now.
Jared, yes, you're covering the team now. You're a journalist, but you're still a fan at heart.
No, that's not true. That's actually not true at all.
Okay, so that KG had no effect on you whatsoever?
I mean, that has an effect from an emotional impact, sure. But I mean, I'm not a fan of the team anymore or anything near that. But I certainly I like everyone on the team, and I hope that they do well. And obviously, I want to see the team succeed because I get to continue to cover the team, and I get to see people that I work around and enjoy succeed, and we get more basketball, which is always great. And I like seeing positive stuff. I don't like seeing people suffer and lose and stuff like that. I like being around winning because it's a more positive environment and it's more enjoyable. So the KG thing was amazing, and it's incredible from so many standpoints to see like this kind of ominous presence that Garnett could have looming in like he's a deity of Celtics lore. I mean, it's like it's almost a biblical story, really.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, from my standpoint, definitely had the chills going right through me because Kevin Garnett's still giving the Boston Celtics assists even in retirement, and you could see how it affected Avery Bradley. So now back in Chicago, the series has shifted, the momentum has shifted. The Celtics are back in the series. Jared, on the Garden Report after Game 3, you had mentioned Rondo 2 times as being, kind of like what's dictating the difference in this series. So you're putting a lot of value in Rondo. Far be it for me to put words in your mouth. Why don't you tell us exactly how you feel the loss of Rondo impacts the team?
No, that's exactly what I was saying on the Garden Report. And it's even more true the next day watching the way that the Celtics were able to go against the Bulls defense, where Rondo was playing quarterback on both ends. And I think his impact was even more. I think his consistent leadership was more impactful on the defensive end. He's so valuable to calling out assignments, helping them improvise on defense, helping them find their way out of tough situations, mismatches, stuff like that. Not having Rondo on the floor anymore really kills them there. I mean, their offense struggled, obviously, but like Rondo was great in Game 2. I would have been surprised to see him play at that like kind of all-star level every single game in the series offensively, but his communicative leadership is like the biggest thing that he contributes to this team, and his consistency. I mean, for a guy that's been really inconsistent throughout his career on both ends, he seemed to be kind of engaged.
Big moments.
Yeah, he was so engaged the entire game, and that was really big for them. and he's on the sideline. He's his real contribution in Game 3 was trying to trip Jake Crowder.
Yeah, come on.
That was great.
That was great. Typical Rondo, right? And then his greatest contribution to Game 3 was also the post-game press conference.
Well, he said he was asked about it in the post-game press conference, and he said what happened was that when you tear your ACL, with him tearing it a few years ago, that sometimes you just need to stretch your leg out, and he just happened to be
opportune moments.
And Jay Crowder just happened to be running a little too close to the Bulls bench. So.
And it just happened to be right around the time I think Jay Crowder blew a kiss to the Bulls bench, or he did something kind of.
Well, he had just scored, and then he ran up the sideline like on top of them. So I mean, it was pretty obvious what Crowder was doing there. Mark Murphy, the Boston Herald, just reported that the NBA might do an investigation into this one.
Well,
doesn't seem like that hard of an investigation.
No, it's all on tape.
With his alibi, we have the tape, so we'll see how long that takes.
Today at practice, you posted on youtube.com/CLNS radio, where all the post-game pressers are, and the practice pressers. Brad Stevens said he's going to stick with Gerald Green in Game 4. Before we hone in on that comment, how bold was the Gerald Green move in Game 3 to put him in the starting lineup?
It was a huge risk. I'm trying to remember who said that. I can't even remember.
I remember. I know. I'm with you. It was Al Horford.
Yeah, it was Al Horford. Yeah. So Al said it was a huge risk. It really was. He said that in the post-game presser after Game 3, I believe. And it was this massive risk where you're putting. It's not because I expected them to put Kelly Olynyk in. I thought the move was going to be they were going to start Olynyk, and then Gerald was going to be the 8th man instead of Jonas Jerebko, and or Jaylen Brown as well. It would be Rozier, Smart, and Gerald Green, and then maybe Amir Johnson would play a little bit here or there. So it was kind of what I expected, but putting Gerald in that starting lineup was a huge risk. But you go back and you just look at the tape, and you see that not only did they change the starting lineup, but they changed the type of actions that they ran on offense. They used a lot of plays where they would do staggered screens, so you'd have Al Horford and Gerald Green kind of lined up together to set multiple screens, and then they split out into different actions. One guy will pop to the elbow, one guy will roll down the lane. They don't do a lot of that stuff usually. Most of their interactions at the top of the key are usually pick and rolls between the point guard and the center, 1-5 high pick and roll, or dribble handoffs on the elbows, flare screens, stuff like that. This was kind of a different offensive game plan, and it worked so well. And obviously the biggest difference in the game was that they hit a lot of their open shots, and they were missing tons of wide open threes that if they made, in Game 1 they lost by a few enough points that if they had just hit like a couple of the wide open threes that they were missing, they probably that would have been the difference right there. Game 2 they just got blown out of the water completely. But the Celtics have not only made an adjustment in lineup stuff, but they've made an adjustment in game plan style. And that was, I think, where the real win came for them.
It was almost as if Brad Stevens upped the ante. I think, like you said, we were all kind of assuming he was going to go a little bit bigger to contain Lopez and then maybe inject a Gerald Green. But to put him in the starting lineup and then change a lot of the actions, it showed the chess match in coaching. And I think that the perception, not necessarily the truth, but the perception among a lot of fans was that Brad Stevens was a deer in headlights in Game 1 and 2. But let me tell you, Game 3, he had complete control of his team.
I think it's pretty. Obviously, that's what fans are going to do, right?
That's what they do.
They're saying stuff. No, there's nobody that thinks that Brad Stevens is a deer in headlights. He's a patient guy. But people have always said that about Fred Hoiberg as well. And then Fred Hoiberg all of a sudden looked like a coaching genius in the first.
Yes, he did. And he looked like he was out coaching Stevens, Hoiberg. But in Game 3, he was not prepared for any of the adjustments. Now, Hoiberg says he's not changing any lineups or he may change the lineups for Game 4. While Brad is going to stick with Gerald. So what do you kind of see going on as far as lineups go for Game 4?
So I'll start with Hoiberg. Hoiberg is going to take Jerry and Grant out of the starting lineup, and he's going to have to roll without a point guard. So Jimmy Butler will be the point guard, it looks like. Dwayne Wade will probably run some point. The Celtics, I talked to Marcus Smart about that. He likes the idea of Jimmy Butler being the point guard. He thinks it's better for them.
Oh, I think so.
Because, and this is what Smart told me, was that keeping track of Butler is like the hardest thing. He is one of the great players off the ball in the NBA, and with Robin Lopez setting screens for him, he's a slippery snake that they can't control. And the Cobra himself now likes the idea of the fact that with Butler on the ball, he's coming down the court. They are in front of him. They know where he is. They can stay on top of him. It puts more pressure on Butler to beat them head on, as opposed to getting around and through them, which is something that he's done really well. I mean, most of Butler's success has been off-ball shooting and transition game, but we did see a little more of it in Game 3, where he was able to attack Smart off the dribble, attack Bradley off the dribble a little bit too. I think that this is the team that the Celtics were hoping to face, a team where Rondo isn't playing well and Butler has a responsibility with the ball the entire time. I think this is a win-win situation. This is a winning situation for the Celtics, and I really like their chances of taking another one here.
Before we go on and get Game 4, I guess, preview prediction, I want to just one gentleman we have not mentioned is Lopez, and they've neutralized him at least in Game 3. How could they keep him under control in Game 4?
Well, I mean, Stevens said that one of the reasons that he wanted Green starting at the 4 or 3 or 4, however you want to call it, with him and Crowder, but it was so that Al would be at the 5 and he would be on Robin Lopez, and that would make sure that they could pull Lopez away from the rim and open up the interior, which worked, and then just have Horford just fighting Lopez on the boards. And while Lopez still is able to get around Horford a lot of the time, the numbers bore out that Lopez didn't play. He only played about 19 minutes, I think. They kind of went away from him because it just wasn't working.
Stevens forced them to by going smaller, right?
Yeah. So I think they can solve this issue with Lopez by just not having him out there most of the time,
which helps the Celtics incredibly on the rebounding end.
It does, yeah, because like Horford's always going to get beat by Lopez. Not only is Lopez one of the best rebounders in the league, but Horford really struggles with these big physical rebounders. And we just saw a bunch of plays over the first 3 games where Horford has the inside position when the ball goes up, and Lopez just slips under him from the baseline and then pushes back out and has a rebounding position. And he's 7 feet tall, so he's got a little bit more of a height advantage as well. So, the game rebounding program finally worked for them in Game 3, and I don't think that adjusting the starting lineup by taking the point guard out is going to make a massive change there for Chicago. It's really more of a question of is Chicago's offense going to be better? Can they actually manufacture better looks than they were able to in Game 3?
And the other question is, are the Celtics going to hit perimeter shots? And if they don't, Jared, how could they stay in the game? Not allow their poor offense to dictate how they play defense.
Well, they won Game 3 pretty convincingly. So if they start missing more shots, then I think it just makes us a really tight game.
That is a very, very good. That is such bare bones and analysis. I love it. That's like Gelso style. I like that. You're right. There's a good buffer there. So, Jared, before you go, you're giving us the best impression of Doc Rivers without even knowing you're doing it. So how about give us predictions for Game 4 in Doc Rivers' voice? So just talk.
Okay, well, now that Blake Griffin's...
Blake, we got to get Blake.
I really do sound like Doc after a double overtime game.
You do. It's a bad officiating.
Yeah, I've been fighting off this cold for days, and it's getting to me. But I think they're going to win Game 4. I mean, I don't think Chicago has a wrinkle in them now that Rondo's gone that's going to somehow fix this problem. I mean, all their guys are playing pretty well. Butler started 1 for 12 in that game, and he didn't start getting going until the last 2 minutes of the third quarter. It's the same exact thing that happened in Game 1. It was like a carbon copy of Game 1. So, but it's really, I think this series is now back to that place that it was when we started this before the series, where the predictions were basically the Bulls will go as far as Jimmy Butler will carry them. And Butler's played well so far, but he hasn't been elite. He's been good on defense. He's been good scoring in the last quarter and a half of the game. But they need him to score the entire game. He needs to be scoring 35 points a night if they want to get in this one.
Jared,
I'm not the kind of person to say a guy needs to score a certain amount of points, like a garbage Shaquille O'Neal analysis.
I have to hit on this. The Celtics scoring was so evenly distributed in Game 3. Isaiah didn't have to score 46 points. He didn't have to score 30. Hell, he didn't have to score 20. How can the Celtics continue to get that kind of distribution in offense. We've not seen that in a long time, Jared.
I mean, Terry Rozier was hitting like step back threes, 6 in this game. I mean, everybody was hitting. Horford really took it to them in the high post. I mean, they were running clear outs for him to just like take a guy head on from the top of the key, and he was getting to the rim pretty well. So not having Amir Johnson on the floor when they do that makes that doable, because they can pull 4 guys out to the perimeter and give them enough space to get to the rim or to play make. So continuing to stay small is the option here. They're fighting fire with ice, and it's working right now.
He's Jared Weiss. He's in Chicago for CLNS Radio. You can find him on Twitter at Jared Weiss NBA. Of course, the CLNS Radio YouTube channel still pumping out all the material in the postseason. YouTube.com/CLNS Radio. Jared, I'll catch you Wednesday night in Boston.
All right, Nick. See you soon.
Safe travels, buddy. Thanks to CLNS Radio's Jared Weiss for taking time out of his busy coverage schedule to chill with us for a couple minutes and of course, give some great analysis of Game 3 from Friday and, of course, today's game, Game 4. A crucial must-win for the Boston Celtics. The difference between going back to Boston, tied in the series 2-2, or down 3-1, it's drastic. And compound that with Rajon Rondo not being able to play, the Celtics seeming to come back together after what was a rocky patch, and momentum swinging back to Boston. Yeah, the Celtics have to win Game 4. It's a must-win. So we're going to continue on our trip out to Chicago, and you heard Jared Weiss. He's not a fan of the Celtics. Well, let me tell you, the guy we have coming up next, Mike Gorman, one side of the longest tenured broadcast duo in the NBA, legend in the industry, and also an admitted homer. So, Mr. Gorman, I'm so thrilled to be able to have him on the show today with me. Anyway, let's go directly to Mike Gorman in Chicago. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining Celtics Beat. It's great to have you on the show out there in Chicago. How you doing?
A little tired, but pretty good. Good win last night, that's for sure. So spirits are high.
No question. Good win last night. Let's start right there. The obvious question is, how is Isaiah? And that's an obvious answer. So let me ask you this: Brad Stevens holding the team together the way he's had to in the last, since the news of Isaiah's sister. How's Brad doing?
Brad's doing quite well. He's got his whole family out here with him. A lot of the coaches brought their families with them. So that's a very important thing for Brad, his family, and so that's very supportive for him. I talked to him about this during the week, that he had to go from coach to father figure to big brother figure, that he had a lot of roles that he had to play, and that had to be emotionally exhausting. But no, he seems more than equal to the task, and Isaiah seems to have benefited from his trip home.
No question. Now, you saw it on Friday night in Game 3. The keys to Game 3, otherwise, without Rondo being there, obviously that's the obvious difference. But I saw a lot of difference makers from Game 1 and 2. Mike, talk to me a bit about what you saw.
Well, I saw a very impressive bench in the second half. Yeah. They only had 4 points at halftime total, and they ended up with 31 for the game. So 27 points and a half for your bench is exceptional. The number of assists the Celtics had, I think it was in the 30s, was also very impressive. And they shot a good percentage of the threes, which they didn't early. So, the Celtics are who they are. They're a three-point shooting team that defends, and they did both last night, and they got performances from a lot of different people. Crowder played very well, I thought. Guys off the bench, Smart, Jerebko, Terry Rozier,
Avery Bradley,
20-plus minutes. Again, everybody who was called upon stepped up and played, and, it sounds crazy to say, but even though they're down 2-1 in the series, I think the Celtics are in pretty good shape right now.
I'm with you. I think the entire momentum has somewhat shifted, but the Celtics, for obvious reasons, kind of looked like deer in headlights after the pressers in Game 1 and 2. And on Friday night, they seemed locked in, confident, and seemed to have their swagger back a little bit too.
Yeah, they did have their edge back a little bit. I noticed that right away when they were on the court. The team would tell you that want to face the best they can face, but the fact that there was no Rondo, Scal and I were amazed. Scal, of course, played here in Chicago, right, and so he has a lot of contact.
The White Mamba.
Exactly, that's where it all began. and I have also talked to a lot of guys over the years and become friends with here in Chicago, and both of us were really surprised how the Chicago people did not feel the loss of Rondo was a big deal. They thought that they would do quite well without him, as well without him as they did with him. And, Scal and I just didn't see it the same way at all. I think Rondo was the difference in Game 1 and Game 2, and really was kind of the wild card that the Celtics weren't really effectively able to deal with. So the fact that he suddenly went down, and you talk about Jerry and Grant and Michael Carter-Williams, the drop-off there at that position is precipitous.
And the intangibles.
Took advantage of it last night. And one thing I haven't read in too many of the write-ups was Avery Bradley had, Butler ended up with 20 points or something like that. I don't have a box score in front of me. But he was 1 for 11 at one point in the game, and that was mostly because of Avery Bradley. So
yeah, I mean,
the combination of Rondo being out and Bradley's defense on Butler really was something Chicago couldn't cope with.
Well, hating the plus-minus, I know that's cliche, but Jimmy Butler minus 27. Bradley definitely had an impact.
He really struggled. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see a monstrous effort out of him on Sunday night, but Avery Bradley will be there again to disrupt it as much as possible. And again, I know I'm curious about it because I love to hear what they think, but I know the odds makers in Vegas, Rondo announced he had broken his thumb. Chicago went from a 2.5-point favorite to a 2.5-point underdog.
Yeah.
That's a 5 swing. That's a huge swing in those terms of the wise guys. So obviously the wise guys think the Celtics are
the wise guys
that advances here. So hope they're right.
Well,
they're wise.
And we know from, especially you, of course, and talking about you and Scal touched upon, we know the impact Rajon Rondo has on players. I mean, he makes Wade look 5 years younger, and he gets Jimmy Butler easier shots. Rondo coming into this series, for me at least, on the appearances I made at the Garden and whatnot, he was the key to this series for me because I thought he just pulled it all together. So Rondo being gone now, huge impact. Also, Rondo's defense on Isaiah was very good in Game 1 and 2, even though Isaiah had a great Game 1. So the loss of Rondo is pretty huge.
As we know from experience, Rondo's a great player when
he wants to be. Yeah, exactly. And,
it appeared, which I thought was really dangerous for the Celtics coming in here. It appeared that he and Wade and Butler had gotten together and decided, okay, we can make some noise as a threesome here.
Mike, they looked like the big three, our big three. Garnett, Pierce, they looked like the big three on after Tuesday night's win. I looked at that and thought, holy cow, this could be a major problem because they seem to be so synced up. And the big three, I'm sure that you heard on ESPN in the presser afterwards, Avery Bradley mentioned a message from KG that went through Ed Lacerte to the locker room.
Yes.
How awesome is it that Kevin Garnett is still giving the Celtics assists?
Yeah, I know. And then he's sending messages through the train.
I love that. Pretty cool. That's the funniest part, through Ed Lacerte. But and Avery was so intense in that post-game presser. We both know Avery is such a quiet and humble guy. He just was so fired up. And that's where I feel the intensity difference, or the swagger, is back. And potentially this series truly is swinging back in the Celtics' favor. You touched on that earlier, Mike. Talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I just feel that they are the number 1 seed against the number 8 seed, and I do think the seedings probably are all messed up this year for a number of reasons we talked for a long time about. But I do think, even though the Celtics are down 1-2 in this series, I think they've reestablished some sense of order to it, and that combined with the lack of Rondo to direct the Chicago attack, and it falls solely now on the shoulders of again Jerry and Grant or Michael Carter-Williams, I think it's distinctly to Boston's advantage. So to say that you're in great shape down
1-2, right? Yeah,
that sounds crazy, but that's exactly how I feel the Celtics are. I'll be very, very surprised if the Celtics don't win on Sunday night and come back to the Garden on Wednesday and we have a 2 out of 3 game series against Chicago with 2 of the games in Boston.
That's good to hear. We talked about Brad Stevens a bit, taking a lot of criticism, maybe unfairly, in the media after Game 2. What he did with Gerald Green last night was bold. That's the only way I could really describe it, and it played out in the Celtics' favor. Did you see that coming at all when there were the rumors surfacing about Brad doing a lineup change?
No.
No one did.
Cal and I talked about that, and we debated Marcus Smart. We debated Jaylen Brown. We debated a lot of people we thought could potentially be the guy, and there was not much heard from the Gerald Green precinct at all. Yeah, Brad gave me a little wink as he was going to the touchdown. He just mouthed the words Gerald Green with a little smile on his face. And I went, yeah, I nodded like, yeah. None of us had figured that out.
And neither did the Bulls, clearly.
Anybody who's talking about having a problem with Brad Stevens is really not paying close attention to what's going on.
Clearly.
He is one of the top 4 coaches in the NBA.
I would agree with you.
I'll defend that statement forever.
I agree with you, and you know, we all know how much we love Celtics fans, but they are a bit fickle. 2 losses, all of a sudden Brad Stevens comes into question, and to me, that's silly. He took total control, outcoached Hoiberg in Game 3, because I sincerely don't think Chicago saw that lineup change with Green at all either. It seemed like he almost upped the ante. I thought he was going to go with more minutes for the bigs, Zeller, Jerebko, which got more minutes. Jerebko is so good in the playoffs last year rebounding. Why haven't we seen more of him?
I think we will. You know, again, the rebounding problem is one the Celtics are going to have.
It's going to happen.
Jonas Jerebko can't solve that for the Celtics. But the Celtics can get out rebound like they did last night and still win games pretty easily if they're making the three ball. That's the trade-off right there. So, you know, again, this is who the Celtics are, and they do it well. And they got to continue to do what they do. If they do that, we'll face the winner of Washington and Atlanta. We'll be talking about that movie.
Let's hope so. Before I let you go, Mike, I know that you were truly concerned after Game 2. It's great to see that you have turned it around for now, going into Game 4 with the Celtics, now kind of taking the momentum back with them. I guess let's wrap it up with what are you've kind of saying that the Celtics can take over this series and bring it back and hopefully get off to round 2. What are the keys to the Celtics doing that moving forward and getting this playoff run back in order?
Well, just continue to do what they're doing right, continue to play that way. But understand in what I'm saying about this particular series is Rondo is that much of a key. We would not be having this same conversation if Rondo had played in the game last night and were 100%, no matter what the result of the game was. Rondo would still be the guy that we would be talking about, and he would still be the guy that Celtics were having problems with. But take him out of the mix, and I think this is really a bit of a mismatch now.
Mike, have you ever seen a more perplexing player or personality than Rondo in all the years? No, right?
I mean, the whole little thing with sticking his foot out and nearly tripping Jay Cutler last night, and them talking about an ACL that he had years ago. He's always been an interesting character and continues to be one. And I'll be curious to see whether the league takes any action on the foot because it looked pretty obvious. It didn't look like he was stretching his leg.
No, and then he comes out and does the presser, which I thought was hilarious in a Rondo fashion. But he almost did the presser as a coach. He's just a perplexing, interesting character. And I'm sorry for the Bulls that they...
He's a wonderful talent.
He is unbelievable talent, so unique. Yep. But I'm sorry for the Bulls that they've lost him. I'm not sorry for the Celtics. It looks like the Celtics have gained momentum. Mike Gorman, thanks for joining us as always, and we'll catch you on the broadcast Sunday night. But I'll see you on Wednesday. I'll be on.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Thanks, Mike. Tell everybody hi.
Okay,
appreciate it.
You bet. Take care. Good. Bye-bye.
Well, Celtics fans, that is going to do it for this week's edition of Celtics Beat, and I can't thank you enough for bearing with me this week. Larry H. Russell's shoes they're big shoes to fill, so I can only try my best. And I do want to thank 2 guys I am a big fan of. That's Jared Weiss from CLNS. You could find him at Jared Weiss NBA, and of course the legendary Mike Gorman at Celtics Voice. Music for Celtics Beat was provided by Will Rock and Steph Legrateau. Be sure to check us out on social media. Our Twitter handle is at Celtics Beat NBA. You can like Celtics Beat on Facebook, facebook.com/Celtics Beat. And again, thanks to our guests, Jared Weiss and Mike Gorman of Comcast Sportsnet New England. Our sponsor, Blue Apron, don't forget, blueapron.com/Celtics Beat. 3 free meals, free shipping. For our staff writer, Eddie Santiago, executive producer, Larry H. Russell, I'm Nick Gelso. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at CLNS_Nick. LHR will be back next week with another edition of Celtics Beat, powered by CLNS.